Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another LFM stream, and we are here for Season 11. Could you believe it? We are even progressing through the double digits now, and we have the Case King Pro Series returning once again after a fantastic season. As always, this championship was brought to close out Season 10, where we had that fantastic fight between Grantis Korekas and Nicholas Hoob, and it was Korekas that ended up becoming the Season 10 champion of this series. And as we now make our way in towards Season 11, we have a whole host of talents. We have new cars making their way into the field, new trials and tribulations for them all to face. But I can tell you one thing, we'll still very much have the same fantastic, exciting racing. And starting us off to really give us a brilliant beginnings of this championship, we are at the legendary circuit of Imola. Almost perfectly timed there with the graphic to showcase that one. And of course, an amazing driver circuit, one of the real old school circuits that is really going to be testing our drivers to their limits this evening. You may be thinking, well, what is this Pro Series about? If you're new to the LFM channel, then welcome. And we are going to be giving you a lot of exciting action over the coming weeks from this championship. The Pro Series, where all of the best drivers on the low fuel motorsport platform come together to see who is really the fastest, and they are going for some pretty tasty prizes once again, all brought to you by the title sponsor of this series, CaseKing.de, and where if you win this championship you can walk away with €2,500 worth of coupons for Moser sim racing gear. Incredible sim racing equipment, and sure to absolutely boost your skill and talents, I have no doubt. If you finish second, then you can get your hands on the Next Level Racing Elite 160 cockpit, a fantastic rig where you can really customize it to your needs and really give yourself the best opportunity to improve your lap times. And if you walk away with third place, you may think that you may be getting away with a bit of a smaller prize. Well, have no fear, because you can get yourself a pair of Hoysinkveld Sim Racing Ultimate pedals, fantastic quality pedals to really give you all of that incredible feel that you need at your feet for throttle and braking inputs, and really managing to maximize your ability on corner entry and exit on ACC. So really some fantastic stuff all up for grabs for these drivers, and you can bet that when you have some of the best talents on ACC and they've got prizes like that on the line, they're going to be really trying to get their hands on that, and they will certainly be pushing on quite intensely to see how they fare. So we'll be moving into the server in just a second as I get some final bits and pieces set up. And hopefully, all things being well, as we begin this new season, things will all work okay at my end. Wonderful news. So we should make our way into the server in just a moment and see exactly how our drivers are going to be getting on. We will have just a few moments of practice left remaining before we then head into full-on qualifying and, of course, the race. But if you're unfamiliar with the Imola race circuit, then here's a little track guide just for you. Really cute, unfortunately, with the wrong transitions. With it just a second for that one to make its way across. And then we shall have a look at this fantastic 16-turn circuit, 5 kilometers in length, where you make your way through that first complex. Very, very tricky for the drivers to try to negotiate, and then you get into that windy early parts of the sector, down in towards Tosa Corner, where you have that hairpin. Opportunities there for overtaking, but a tricky one to get right. Up to Piratella, fast-flowing corner here, and they're very, very tricky through Aqua Minerale. Back up to the top of the hill, over possibly the most complex sequence to get consistent in the race. Very anti-alta, that chicane, very difficult to do, and you want a car that's comfortable through there without a shadow of a doubt. And then through the last couple of corners of Ravazza to then close out the lap, and then this long start-finish straight, which does give you enough of an opportunity to slipstream and make some positions in the process. So a fantastic circuit, very much one of those circuits like the classes Spa, Kyalami, Silverstone, Monza. It really is in that upper echelon of circuits where it just makes you absolutely adore driving in these sorts of conditions and around this sort of circuit layout. So, as I say that everything is okay at my end, overall, that is true. However, it's possible that I may have joined the wrong server. So we'll just bear with me just for a moment so I can actually see exactly how our Split 1 drivers are going to be getting on. We had 200 out of 200 sign-ups for this evening and really maximising the talent pool. And I'll tell you what, of course, at the tail end of our season, we saw a couple of drivers that joined the very closing stages, and they were sporting that new McLaren 720S GT3 Evo, and it proved to be incredibly quick in that season finale at Monza. And I can tell you now, a little bit of a heads up, not spoiling too much before we get into the race, that very much we have the same sorts of prospects tonight and a much larger roster of those McLarens featuring in the grid. So, as just looking to get final bits and pieces dialed in, and I have a horrible feeling that I spoke just fractionally too soon about everything working okay, because my overlay has got itself into a little bit of a pickle, by the looks of it, that being the technical term, of course. So I shall try to see if I can fix these things at my end. If not, may have to do some interesting adjustments on the fly. And yeah, so thank you already for the support in the chat. Definitely big good luck to all of our competitors. And right now, I think a little bit of luck needed for me as well, if these are going to get up and running. This is the problem when you update software and it doesn't quite work in the way that you were anticipating it to go. So, no matter, we shall negotiate things as best as possible, and let's see what we can do. If I do a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and I think that we are going to have to... Oh, good, we're going to have to make some extra adjustments on the fly. I do apologise, everybody, but I shall try to get this up and running as quick as I possibly can. And if we do that, then I think this will probably end up actually looking quite familiar to you. But we do previously, if you have seen this series, we do have some custom overlays that we end up working with. But I think, unfortunately, that's not looking like it's going to be working this evening, because I just have a bunch of black screens when I try that. But no matter, we shall look to do that, and hopefully, all things being well, in one form or another, may not be quite the same glamorous layout that we are used to on the Pro Series, but we should at least have some sort of form of ACC footage. So we will be going with that, I think, for this evening's action. So, final parts of practice, drivers able to get their last bits of setup work done into play. And we always talk about the fact that they can approach this in one of two ways. Either you can look to try to redial in your race setup, but I'll tell you what, Aidan Walsingham practicing his pit entry there and getting as close to that inside wall as he could. And the reason for that is he wants to shorten that distance as much as he possibly can, so that in the race that you can minimise that pit time and really try to see if you can bump your way up the order, because every fraction of a second really does count when you are competing at this sort of level here on ACC. So, drivers, they get either their race prep done in the very final moments, or they look to try to dial in their qualifying setups, because of course, that being the immediate next session, you want to feel comfortable in the car, and qualifying can be so pivotal in terms of how your race ends up playing out. So definitely dynamics there between the drivers in terms of how they look to wrap up there. We've also got some familiar names, some fantastic names in this field. We'll be going through a little bit of a run through in just a moment, but also maybe names that you're familiar with, but not in the cars that we've got used to seeing them in, as we've certainly got the star-studded field that we are used to seeing in the Pro Series, but definitely an additional mixture of cars. It was this man, Amedeo Castorino, that took a very dominant victory in the closing stages of Season 10 at Monza Race Circuit, and he was really the one to prove that this new McLaren is extremely fast and competitive, and probably inspired a decent chunk of the grid, I would imagine, to actually look to pick this car for Season 11, because it has shown to be very, very balanced balanced, it's very predictable to drive, it's quick in a straight line. And of course with the 1.9 update that we saw in ACC, in terms of the way these cars behave, in terms of curbs and everything now, they're pretty comfortable. Look at that for a shot. Everybody starting to fly out of the pit lane and get themselves ready for qualifying, and the first man that's going to be out of the pits is going to be the man that won last season's championship, Grantis Korekas for Veloce Esports, the #1 car in the server, #1 man on the LFM platform, of course, and the Lithuanian driver. If you saw him last season, and for any season prior, you'll know that he was quite the Porsche specialist. Perhaps no more, as a lot of this Veloce roster have decided to explore this new McLaren 720S. You can see in the background Jardier in that car as well. We still have Karppinen in the new Lamborghini. You see another one of the Veloce McLarens in the hands of George Boothby. Further down the order, and let's see, we've got Luke Whitehead registered for tonight's race, and here's another one in that car as well, and also a little bit of a move in the sim racing world. If I can just track down Aidan Walsingham, you may notice sporting some new colours as well. So seemingly, the British driver who did some fantastic work last season in, I believe, the Ferrari 296, if I remember rightly, has moved over to Veloce, it seems, and a very understandable, worthy sign-up on that front, because incredibly quick driver who's displayed his talent time and time again to be up there with the very best. But I think it's only fair to start off season 11 with our first on board with the reigning champion, and who of course are going to be the first man out on the circuit. So hopefully at least these things working in the way that I was hoping that they would. Let's get going for a lap of this Imola race circuit then. So barreling on down the start-finish straight for the first time of season 11, and building up the speed all the way down to this very tricky braking zone. It's not quite a straight line on the approach. It's definitely flat on the way down. We're trying to spot your braking point on the outside now, just braking before that curve. Down a couple of gears, clip that first curve, maybe a little bit too much taken in that McLaren, but nicely negotiated all the way through in towards turn 3 now, down towards turn 4, and you see aggressive on the entry again, using a little bit of entry curve, clips the first apex, clips second, using the rotation of those gears. Maybe a little bit of dip of the wheel in the gravel, would have lost momentum there. Now in towards Tosa curve. Got to be patient here on the throttle. Early upshift to try to get the drive out of the corner. You want to minimise the use of that TC. Use the torque out of the car, and then drive you up towards Piratella through the kink of turn 8. Big, bold commitments on the entry. Careful on the exit for track limits. Down through turn 10. These come at you thick and fast. Entry curve again, clipping the apex towards Aqua Minerale now. Tricky part of the circuit to get right, but of course beautifully negotiated from the reigning series champion. Now very anti-outer, spot your braking point, big curbs through here. Don't disturb the car as much as they used to. I might take that back just for a moment, because Grantis Korekas certainly kangarooing his way on the exit there, so I'm sure there'll be some slightly smarter exits coming up later on in this qualifying session. Down the gears once more into second, get the rotation, and towards the final corner of Ravazza on the power. Use all of the exit curve, carry the momentum down towards the start-finish line, and for the first completed lap then of qualifying here in Season 11, Grantis Korekas in that #1 car is going to set the benchmark. 40.4 for him. Teemu Karppinen splitting the two Veloce/Yas drivers in that Lamborghini, just 0.05 of a second away from Korekas' efforts, as all the times start to flurry their way in. And Luke Whitehead, George Boothby are going into the 39 to 39.992. That tells you how much time there is on the table, because look at that, another name returning to the championship, Niels Nyrox, BMW driver, of course, in that BS Plus competition car, and a very well-known face in the ACC community. Fantastic to have him back in the Case King Pro Series, and immediately picking up where he left off and being right at the very top of this fantastic field. So George Boothby then on those first series of flyers is top of the timing sheets, followed by the German driver on your screen right now, Luke Whitehead, the next of the Veloce McLarens, and then Tinko van der Velde in the Williams Esports Audi. the number 18 car, currently sitting inside the top 5. Then, of course, Korekis, Carpenter, and then a whole fleet of those new McLarens as we have returning faces. Eric Del Fanta, another one to take up the McLaren, the Italian driver, following in his compatriot's footsteps, rounding off a very good season performance at Monza was Castorino. Omashima we saw joining in the Lamborghini, almost taking victory at Valencia. But didn't quite come off in the end. But the Japanese driver proving to be very talented behind the wheel and already made some big statements in this championship early on. And has continued to stay with us ever since. We've got Tajdain in the number 23 McLaren. He slots into P5. Improvements coming through. That was Hoffman in the number 11 car. The BMW is looking very quick around this circuit. Only 2/10 away from George Boothby. But so far, no one else able to make their way into the 39. So Lloyd's Rainier. Castorino improves up to P4. Rainier into P7 for the Frenchman. So good effort there from him. I heard a car go into the gravel. Didn't quite see who that was for. I can see that one though. That's number 11. And they will pull over and go back into the pits. So George Boothby had a bit of a cool-down lap by the looks of it on the last effort there from the British driver. As I see the Mercedes of Sasha Vassner, I think that is, in the number 19 low-fuel motorsport car, getting out of the way for the number 6. And as a reference for those that may be new to LFM as a platform, so the car numbers you see are based on the relative elo of the drivers. So on the LFM platform, you have a safety rating and you have an elo skill rating. If you come over from the world of iRating, then very similar system to what they have over there. And like I say, when you've got these fantastic drivers in the server, it shall rank you based on your elo. So you need safety rating to effectively get your permission into some of these series, and then once that ELO rating factors in, it will then jostle you around between the different splits. So this is the top split, the top 40 drivers on LFM that have signed up for the Pro Series tonight, and those numbers that you see corresponding to their relative ELO position in the server. And I'll tell you what, talking about jostlings for 4 positions, Tinko van der Velde in that Audi may have pulled over after that one, because 39.890, fantastic lap for that car. Not a car we're used to seeing really be up at the top end of the field, but Tinko obviously a very, very fast and talented driver, and a wealth of experience and knowledge in the team that he, of course, is representing. So, just making our way through halfway of this session. Yellow flag for Karppinen on the exit of Ravazza. So, maybe went a little bit deep, dipped wheel into the gravel. Improvement for Del Fanta up to P5 for the Italian driver in that number 20 car. Look at how closely packed the field is there. A tenth and a half, 2/10, 7 thousandths. The next gap, then we're talking hundredths. It's into the gravel. Number 20 goes Luke Whitehead, who briefly was at that top end of the timing sheets, has found himself all of a sudden, he's only 3.5 tenths off the pace, a champion in his own right, and the number 4 car now having to try to really find the pace, and he just invalidated the lap, so maybe struggling to dial in that McLaren. Of course, slightly unfamiliar territory for a lot of the Veloce lineup. I do believe Van Hatch found the most experienced with that car so far. Very likely would have been Jardier. Of course, the sister team, Yas Heat to Veloce, so we have good representation from them in the server as well, in the form of Mr. Honzik, Valentin Barrier as well, joining us this evening. And then we've also got other teams in the field. Of course, the Unicorns of Love, Florian Duakop in the number 27 Lamborghini is joining us once more. A German driver who won in spectacular fashion, I believe, if my historical LFM knowledge is correct, in Season 8 around Bathurst Race Circuit, where he was leading by a country mile, and then on the penultimate lap, in the kindest possible way, absolutely stacked it on the exit of Skyline into the wall, did a 360. Car was fundamentally in in digital pieces, if you were, and then he rather kind of crawled to the finish line with Grantis Korekis and I believe George Boothby were in hot pursuit on that occasion. He just about managed to win by a few seconds, and it was possibly one of the most spectacular ends to a race that we have had. Of course, Bathurst, the mountain, it always puts on a show like that, and Imola, have no doubt. It may not have the close barriers, the close proximity to danger immediately, but I tell you what, when you put a chicane like this of Variante Alta in the race, we already saw the likes of Korekis, the reigning champion, being upset over that. Luke Whitehead also coming unstuck there as well. And it's a fast circuit, it is high commitment, and when you have that big run towards turn 1, which does promote overtaking opportunities, you can absolutely bet your money on the fact that we are going to have some fantastic racing between these drivers. Sasha Vassner improving by a couple of tenths in that Mercedes. That should be a car that should be relatively stable through that chicane, so we'll have to see how he gets on, improving up to around the top 15, I do believe, and he does go into 14th position. No improvements as of yet for drivers inside of the top 10. Someone's trying to make their way into the top 10, though, is the number 8 Canadian driver, Jade Hutchinson, a multiple race winner in the Pro Series now for Jean Lacey Esports, continuing to sport the Lamborghini, of course, and proved to have some fantastic pace last season. And he's always a man that you just know is going to be somewhere in the fight. Even if he ends up starting a little bit further down the order, he just always manages to find his way up and pick off positions one by one. It very rarely has he ever got into trouble. I may have just given him the worst commentator curse possible, but fingers crossed we should see a clean race for tonight's action. Has invalidated the lap on the last occasion, so we'll point the camera away to somewhere else and see if the number 8 car can put in a new flyer. Someone that is, though, just in front of him. Jarnier improves up to P16 in the number 3 McLaren, and a car that he has been getting to grips with recently and finding some good pace in. Maybe would have been wanting a little bit more tonight, though, perhaps. Meanwhile, his teammate, Valentin Barry, the Frenchman, down in P19 at the moment, did find a 10th. I heard a car in the gravel. So, see, I don't think they abandoned the lap, though, so maybe just dipped a wheel in there and lost a little momentum on the way up to Tosa Corner. And I'll tell you what, the improvements now starting to come in. Let's go on board with this man, George Boothby, in this number 6 McLaren. He's going purple in the first sector, make his way down to this very tricky part of the circuit. Aqua Minerale absolutely tests your confidence in the car, and I tell you what, it's a good run because he's now up by 0.2 of a second, and that will be enough to stick him on provisional pole. How's he fare through a chicane? We saw his teammate come unstuck here. No such issues for the British driver, one of the winningest drivers we've ever had in the Pro Series. Gets a little bit of a toe off one of the fellow McLarens. He makes his way down in towards Brabants to spot your braking point, opening up the entry as much as he can. Clipping the apex, using all the exit curve, flowing through in towards turn 18. On the power again, it's a good lap for George Boothby. I think he's going to maintain the advantage he's been having throughout most of this one. So to the top of the timing sheets for the number 6 car. What's it going to be? A 39.765 for George Boothby with just a couple of laps left to go. He will be able to do 2 more laps if he's got the tyres and the fuel for it. Whereas somebody like Amadeo Castorino, the man that won out Monza at the tail end of Season 10, is not going to improve anything beyond P5 because he has gone to the pits. What about the reigning champion, Grantis Korekis? How's he fare through the chicane this time around? Looked a little bit awkward, but he has managed to improve overall. Of course, his previous best was a little bit clunky through that part of the circuit previously. Yellow flag out for the number 12 car. That is Valentin Barrier that's pulled over, so no further improvement over P19 for the number 12 car. What can Grantis Korekis do? Tinko is going extremely quick in the opening sector, though he's backed out of it, so he's made a mistake, so Tinko won't get to pole. What about Korekis? What can he do? Can he make it Veloce 1-2? And the answer is no. And so he will stay P3. He did improve his time. It's good enough for a 9.62, but not good enough to make it onto the front row. What about Trevor Wenham? A man that returned to the championship last season, and great to have him back here once again. Hopefully might stick around for a bit in Season 11 because he put on an absolute show for us in Season 10. Of course, was the #1 man on the LFM platform, the original top. So he was at an unreachable distance in terms of his licenses elo for such a long time. And but I tell you what, he won't be improving anything beyond P14 in qualifying. Drivers over are still on a lap. Marco Bischoff, Nils Niox, and Luke Whitehead all still trying to find valuable tenths of a second. So is the likes of Mattia De Campo. He is up by 2 tenths in the opening sector. Aidan Walsingham, new Veloce recruit, middle sector for him, and he is up by 1/10 of a second. So this qualifying is not done, and neither is George Boothby because he's going purple? That's an interesting one. Purple in the opening part of the lap. He may not need it, but he's a perfectionist. Every top-level sim racer is. Number 25 has pulled over to the side of the road. So is number 29 of Manson. As more drivers unable to find time. But Niels Niles rounding out this lap, trying to see if he can make his way in towards the 39s. He's got a good couple of tenths in hand. He goes in towards Ravazza for the final time of this qualifying session. This would see him towards the top 5 if he can round this one out. He's carried good momentum down the start-finish straight. He looks to go then to close out the lap. What's it going to be for the number 16 car? And it's good enough for P4. George Boothby coming in towards that chicane then for the final time. And what a send it is. Of course, he's not so much under pressure, so he can really look to chuck it through there. And I'll tell you what, it's paying dividends on the Delta. He's found 1/10 of a second. No one is going to be able to challenge George Boothby in the closing stage of this qualifying. He's just merely in a race with himself to see if can he make that advantage. Can he get his confidence up even further going in towards this hour-long race? And I think he's going to. It's a big lap from the number 6 car, and it's going to be a 39.625. Incredible stuff from George Boothby. And he takes pole position once more in the Pro Series. Incredible stuff from him to close out that one. And another stellar performance from the British driver. We shall see. Of course, we've had some slight complications this evening when it has come to certain things, but interestingly, I do believe, okay, this is an interesting one. Will we be able to at least do this? Because this hasn't been something that I've been able to do for a while, so fingers crossed, everybody, if we will be able to make our way through a full-on grid lineup ahead of tonight's action. And in principle, all the bits and pieces are there. I'm just waiting for the updated graphic to come through, but fingers crossed that will come through in just a moment. We shall have a look at our very, very talented field this evening as they embark on the very first race of Season 11. Like I say, competing for some incredible prizes brought to you by caseking.de to get their hands on some incredible sim racing equipment from Moser, Next Level Racing, and Hoysingveld. So we'll see exactly what they are going to be bringing to the table. And something has just occurred to me, and I think I may be able to fix this potentially if I'm lucky. Let's see if I can do this. Apologies, everybody, but hopefully, if my understanding is correct of what may be causing the issue, then a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and if we're lucky, hopefully we are. If not, we'll make our way towards a grid lineup anyway. And would you look at that? Fantastic. It almost ends up coming across like I know what I'm doing. So exciting stuff in the comms box as we get stuff lined up for this end. So, George Boothby taking another pole position in the Pro Series ahead of this man. Tinko van der Velde for Williams Esports lines up on the front row in that number 18 Audi. Then it will be Grantis Garekas, the reigning series champion, to start in P3. He ended last season. We performed in the entirety of last season in incredible form. Nils Narks returns to the championship and starts in a very good P4. And this one snuck under the radar. Noah Reader in the Mercedes. So, of course, man has been in the Porsche for quite a while. Now making his way in towards the Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Good lap from him in qualifying. Amadeo Castorino starting in P6, the last man that won a race in this championship. Eric Del Fanta, his fellow Italian, starting behind. And then Kazuki Omashima in the number 30, starting in P8. Next on the BMWs, Jaro Hoffman in the number 11 car. Good stuff from him to start in P9. And then we have Marco Bischoff in the Lamborghini, if my screen reads correctly, and I think it does. Well, this really is a chop and change for the K. Kramer Racing Esports car, so moving away from the Porsche with these latest developments. Very interesting to see how they adapt to that. Timo Karppinen starting in P11 with Luke Whitehead in P12, maybe further down than we would have expected for that man. Lois Rainier, the Frenchman, in P13 with Trevor Wenham in P14 as he returns once more to the championship. Next of the Mercedes, starting in P15 with Emanuele Tajadain in the next of the many McLarens that we have on the circuit. And then behind him will be Albin Manson in the number 29 car. Ahead, of course, of a very big fan favourite. I am sure this man will be getting a lot of support tonight. Jardier Jaroslav Honzik in that number 3 car, starting in P18. Felix Hans Winzer Hacker, the next of the Audis in this field. So good to see some more manufacturer representation in this top split. And then rounding out the top 20, Jade Hutchinson again. He would have been hoping to be a bit further up the order, I am sure. Valentin Barrier next for Yassit in 21st place. Head of Berzakovsky in the number 33 McLaren, starting in 22nd place. Vloche recruit Aidan Walsingham starting in 23rd place, with Matt De Campo for Team Shazoo GT Omega starting in 24th place in that number 15 car. Oscar Tringali in the first of the Ferraris. Can you believe it? 296. The first one all the way down in 25th position. Archon Manisha starting in 26th place. Paul Lotmeyer, then the first of the Porsches. My goodness, how times change. So the first Porsche all the way down in 27th place. Jan Drexler still sporting his BMW that he has used for a good few seasons now. Soldatov, though, has discarded that very same BMW and has moved across to the Mercedes himself. Interesting to see how he gets on with that. Trafka, the Polish driver in the number 22 car, starts in 30th place. And Voltek Neuwirth returning in the Aston Martin, down in 31st position. Then we have Toby Lang in the number 24 car for the German, and he'll be starting in 32nd place. Philip Gross in the next of the Lamborghinis, 32 car, starting in 33rd place. And then a race winner that we were talking about earlier, but different machinery for him today. Florian Duakop, the German driver for the Unicorns of Love team, starting in 34th place. Lucas Bergold, number 35, starts in 35th position, with then Nico Pennon continuing to sport that distinctive BMW from last season in 36th place. Narzazinski starts in 37th in the next of the McLarens. Brian Kingsley, the number 13 car in the server, also for Unicorns Love, starts in 38th place. Fabio Steyer will start in 39th for number 28. And rounding out the grid, Jonathan Clifford, the American driver, back in his fan favourite Lamborghini for that one then. And we shall make our way back over to the standard broadcast. And things a little bit of a slight pickle, and just like that, we are going to be getting underway then for 60 minutes of racing here at Imola to kick things off for Season 11. Some of the best drivers once again in the field in the Pro Series, so buckle in everybody, because we are going to have some fantastic action. It'll be George Boothby to lead Tinko van der Velde away to turn 1 for the very first time. Will it be another win to add to George Boothby's already very decorated tally, or will it go to someone new further down the field? Let's wait and see. Lights are waiting to go out. Drivers waiting to slam that pedal to the floor for the very first time. And see, a little bit out of position for George Boothby. Drive-through penalty for Trevor Wenham down in 14th place. That'll be for being out of position, but it's a good start from the very front there. McLaren versus Audi towards turn 1. Hard on the brakes is George Boothby. A little bit deep, perhaps. No, he holds on to the position. We'll have to go to Helicam for this as they all fly through our first sector. Eric Del Fanta off and going around the outside is Omashima, the Japanese driver, already pouncing. And it's almost 4 abreast as we head in towards this first complex. BMW of Hoffman down the inside, going to turn in towards the outside. That's another one of the McLarens. That's Luke Whitehead trying to find an advantage all the way around the outside into Tosa corner. Brave as you like from the British driver. He'll try to see if that McLaren has got the grunt over the BMW, and it looks like it does as they head up towards Piratella for the very first time. Disaster though for Trevor Wenham down in P13, just behind Jardier, going down the inside of Emmanuel Tajdain, so going up a couple of positions, but the Italian driver already looking to fight back on the run in towards Minerali, but he can't get down the inside there. And Jardier in that number 3 car goes very wide, and that might give the opportunity for the McLaren to fight back. So McLaren versus McLaren inside defence, understandably for Jardier, but it's not enough, and now he's under pressure from this man, Jade Hutchinson, around the outside. Surely not. A little bit of a cut there, side by side. Somehow they get through there okay. A little bit wide in the background for the Yassi teammate, I think, of Valentine Barrier. Down in actual fact, sorry, excuse me, it must have been one of the other cars. Gavanti trying to make the move over Hutchinson, following through his Yassi teammate through Ravazza. They go a little bit of a squeeze on the exit. The high-mo setups got of Tans Vinzer watching this with a great deal of interest, but they get through there okay. How's it all looking at the front of the field? Is George Boothby already with a healthy advantage over Tinko van der Velde. Korekas in P3, and look at this, Whitehead on the charge. P10 already for the number 4 car, and he may have had a poor qualifying, but he is looking to be very rapid in the race by the looks of it. If he keeps this up, and already looking to reel in the next of the McLaren's timing board, I think will update in just a moment, as I heard some shenanigans going on further down the order. My goodness, almost 5 abreast towards the next series of corners. 5-second penalty as well. Traffic further down the order. Big dive from the Mercedes there. As big contact. Hutchinson involved in that one, and that's not going to help his race at all. Almost getting caught up in the rejoin was the Mercedes there, 3 wide on the exit towards Tosa corner now as it all kicks off. And I tried to negotiate where enough to look which car to find on the cameras, because it's all kicking off. Further contact on the run up towards Piratella. Let's try to see if we can catch who that is. I think that is Pennon versus Toby Lang. Toby Lang down the inside in the number 24 McLaren. Manages to get the move done. Nico Pennon losing out. So did Trafka, I believe, in all of those exchanges. And there's further stuff kicking off here. Fabio Steyer in the number 28 car, who's made up some positions as Hutchinson tries to recover and sits back in towards 37th place. So even further down the order, there is action absolutely non-stop. Narzinski looked up the inside there of Kingsley for a moment. Can't make a move there, and in actual fact loses a bit of momentum through the chicane there. So we look back towards our leaders. Tinko van der Velde may have let George Boothby get away for a moment, but I tell you what, he's pushing on 40.390 for Tinko, and swapping of positions were there over the start-finish line. It's very close. Luke Whitehead, though, he's trying to make up another move towards turn 1. They go, and it's a bit on the aggressive side for Whitehead, and he'll go all the way through the kitty litter, and the McLaren jumps in back ahead. That is Carpenter, I do believe, now trying to slot in front of the Veloce car. Castorino's had issues through the opening sector as well. It's all kicking off here in the Pro Series. It's like we never left. Carpenter now trying to go back on the attack towards the outside, in towards Tosa corner, trying to see if he can make anything stick. Can he? So we look on board the rear diffuser of this number 4 McLaren, but he does manage to get himself back together. But I tell you what, it's not quite the same story for the likes of Castorino, who ended up making a little bit of an error, I do believe, through that exact same complex as Luke Whitehead did when he went wide, and is now under all sorts of pressure from the likes of Trevor Wenham behind. And, excuse me, that's Lloyd's Rainier, of course, very similar looking car to Castorino. Castorino's still up in P6, excuse me, so is Lloyd's Rainier that ends up breaking up that train somewhat, and it's getting very busy with the likes of Tajdaid looking up the inside of Vasta. Can't find an opportunity, though. It's a big mistake on the exit of the chicane, and I do believe that we could, of course, we do have the live stewards here in the Pro Series, and I think they have very kindly removed that penalty for Trevor Wenham, so I'm sure he is breathing a sigh of relief. And of course, a big thank you to all of the organisers, all of those behind the scenes that do absolute wonders. I just shout at the broom cars going by as it's possible move for the number 5 cars. They head towards turn 1 for the next time. It's all still as they were at the front of the order, but I'm not sure it's going to be the same for these drivers heading towards turn 1. They go, but Trevor Wenham can't get by, and he will have to just slot into that toe for just a moment. Of course, has to be wary of Sasha Vassner applying the pressure behind. White flag for the BMW of Hoffman, who made a mistake on Whitehead, sides his way through. Back in towards P10, the Veloce Esports driver goes, as he continues to try to regain some of that progress that he lost from that mistake. As looking at the front of the field, George Boothby may have gone fastest on the last lap, but I tell you what, if you were looking at this battle right now of who seems to be in better shape at this point of the race, it does look like Tinko is the man on the move. Let's go on board with this Audi, the V10 roaring in the back of the number 18 cars. He looks to try to apply the pressure to that Veloce Esports McLaren. These two have gone toe-to-toe on many occasions. See, how do they fare through the chicane? This can absolutely make or break your race. But again, that McLaren looks very planted and comfortable through there. Carreras has found a bit of time on his previous lap, but is still dropping overall relative to some of these other guys. What about Castorino trying to apply the pressure to Noah Rita in that Mercedes? And it could be a move potentially on the cards almost sooner rather than later. I was expecting towards turn 1, but by the looks of it, with a mistake like that, I think No Reed is going to be under a hell of a lot of pressure from that Golf livery McLaren that's closing all the time. Looks to the inside. Can he get down the inside? Oh, but Mercedes has got good grunt down towards the first corner, so we have to look towards the outside. Now look one way, looks almost the other, and dives down on the brakes for the Italian. Not quite. So the man that won out at Monza last time in season 10, not quite in a position to get up into the top 5 on this occasion, but will apply the pressure sooner rather than later, swapping positions between Jardier and Valentin Barrier, and one way or another is brought in Tans Vinzahacker and also Manson into play here, and now sensing an opportunity almost down the inside. Here he goes. He won't be able to make that one stick, but what about Walsingham versus Tringali in that 296? And it is going to go the way of the British driver to make his way up the order. A couple of penalties handed out for Manisha and Trafka. We will have a look at the stewards' inquiries in just a moment. Meanwhile, Hutchinson does get past his fellow Lamborghini driver of Soldatov. Excuse me, that is Philip Gross that has just slotted in behind in the number 32 car. So Hutchinson now up towards 34th position. And I'll tell you what, it may have been pretty close a moment ago, but now the gap between your leaders over a second. So George Boothby has put the hammer down, and he wants to say bye-bye to that Williams Esports Audi that is in hot pursuit, as Castorino sending the Mercedes of Noah Rita around on the exit of the chicane there. Omashima as well was slow on the exit of the Variante Alta, and I think that was to avoid the Mercedes that came hurling across the side. He is going to manage to rejoin, I think, hopefully fairly safely. Good job there to Noah Rita. So we'll try to see if we can catch what happened there. So we'll go to this replay. Hopefully all of this will work. You see it was a squirrely exit for Noah Reed, and he is going to move across. Oh, and Castorino, he kept his nose in for a gap that was closing all the time, and in the end has sent round the German driver, who I have no doubt is going to be absolutely furious about that one. I'm sure Castorino, he'll have a few words to say. I'm sure stewards will be having their take on that in just a moment, but very unfortunate stuff for those drivers there, and that was a moment that you really do not expect to be seeing. Of course, these drivers, they're competing for some very, very good prizes. That leads them to apply the pressure and lean on one another perhaps a little bit more than they normally would. But that's a very unusual place for an instance to take place. And unfortunately, Norita, who was doing wonders in that lead Mercedes, having switched over from the Porsche of old, and unfortunately has now found his way much further down the order than he would have been anticipating. And as I try to inspect the steward's inquiry sheet, as I have a little bit of an error on that part. Oh dear. I'll try to fix this in the background as well. So we'll keep up with all of the action. By the looks of it is Hoffman now trying to apply the pressure in that BMW towards the outside of Marco Bischoff. He looks to go, but he can't quite make that one stick. That Lamborghini slamming the door shut on the exit of Ravazza. Then it has good momentum, and I tell you what, it's now the likes of Teemu Karppinen that is trying to apply the pressure in this Lamborghini to that BMW in front. We've seen the BMW have good straight line speed in the past. How is it down at this start-finish straight of Imola? And it's pretty good. The German cars certainly performing very well in terms of straight line speed. Neither the likes of the McLaren or the Lamborghinis able to stick with them, as they all look to kick up just a little bit of dirt through that opening complex. Let's get a fantastic shot of those cars are blasting their way by. And I'll tell you what, Carpenter maybe got a fantastic exit there, looking towards the inside, but can't quite get the nose past the BMW on this occasion. Meanwhile, Florian Duacop has made a move past Voltaire Neuwirth in that Aston Martin. The Aston Martin trying to see if he can respond immediately, but I don't think he's going to be able to do anything about that number 27 car unless he goes wide. He has dipped the wheel in the gravel. That may give the opportunity to Neuwirth. He looks towards the outside. Has to keep an eye on the mirrors. Look at that, faithful of the Mercedes of Soldatov right there. But they all stay as they were. As meanwhile, at the top of the grid, it's all very much the same as it was. Boothby leads ahead of Van der Velde. Korekas, though, in hot pursuit of the Audi driver, who now starts to have seemed to have dropped a bit of pace, and maybe the tyres started to give way on that number 18 car, and the McLaren that has shown to be very, very strong so far and be favoured by a lot of drivers, maybe starting to come into its best window, as 2 tenths up for Korekas, 2 tenths down for Tinko. Across the line, see how much time the reigning champion gained on the last lap, and it was half a second. And half a second, when you have margins like we saw in qualifying, where these drivers are separated by thousandths at times, half a second is absolutely everything. That can be the difference between whether you stay inside the top 5 or you find yourself trying to hang on to the top 20. Battles further down the order still as well inside the top 10 as they look to close some of those gaps up, as do the likes of Pendon versus Trafka. Trafka trying to go down the inside. It's a big dive from the McLaren there. A little bit of a clomp at the curbs and clomp on the exit as well. He's going to run wide. As a result, Pendon trying to go for the switchback. Great stuff from the BMW driver. A little bit of door banging on the entry to this next complex, but I think Trafka is later on the brakes and he has got the move done. Nico Pendon might have something to say about that, but one way or another, the McLaren has made their way through. As these battles continue to take place up and down the field, we'll continue to just keep an eye on Korekas versus Tinko, as the gap now sitting at just around 3 tenths of a second. And in the meantime, we shall try to regather the steward's inquiry sheet if I can, and I can. How exciting. So let's go for a little bit of a review there, as I think a bit of a mistake from Korekas through a chicane whilst my eyes were looking elsewhere. And that has dropped the gap quite a bit. But I'll tell you what, Luke Whitehead, who has been moving his way up through the field, continuing to be on quite the charge, as now he looks to apply pressure to the likes of Omashima and Del Fante. But it's tricky when you're battling the same car as you that you are driving. You're fast in all the right places. Obviously, the driver will make a difference. Setup will make a bit of a difference. But generally speaking, when you're at this tippy top level, they are very, very close, as demonstrated right now by Jaro Hoffman, who's coming under pressure from Bischoff. Bischoff towards the inside will look to get the move done. Karppinen trying to go on the attack towards the outside. No room found there. Both of them ending up in the gravel. Flashing lights there from Karppinen. Clearly not very happy about that. And Marco Bischoff breathes a sigh of relief in that new Lamborghini that he is driving and consolidates his P9 position. As meanwhile, Luke Whitehead still continuing to apply the pressure to the McLaren just ahead of him of Omashima. So it was a 5-second penalty for the number 25 car for causing a collision. That was to Manisha. And other than that, I don't see any other penalties that have been handed out. But I could have sworn that there was a penalty that I saw further down the order. Maybe that has since been cleared by the stewards. I'm not 100% sure. But either that or one way or another, I'm going completely mad and trying to keep an eye on so many cars that are going a bit double visioned in the process. But I'll tell you what, Luke Whitehead is absolutely clinical with the way that he is making his way through the field. And a mistake there from Omashima on the exit, and it allows Luke Whitehead in that Veloce McLaren to move up to P7 now in the number 4 car as he continues to gain and move his way up through the field. And for reference, even with the battling, his pace has been in those 40s and in the mid-40s for the most part. And the likes of Tinko, Kurekas, Niels, all those drivers ahead of him, either similar pace or struggling to maintain that. And that is with him coming through the field as well. So definitely keep an eye on that, man, because we still have 45 minutes of racing to go, and I can guarantee you it's going to be the absolute non-stop chaos and carnage that we've had so far all the way to the end. It's what we love about the Pro Series. It is on the edge of your seat stuff from start to finish. Trevor Wenham, after having that drive-through cleared, settled around that P13 spot, although a little bit of a dip of the wheel in the gravel. That'll give Sasha Vassner some hope and interest in maybe being able to make up a move. Meanwhile, we have this train of almost 5 cars going all the way from De Campo through Manisha, Berzakowski, Walsingham, Tringali, and then coming up to the back of that train, Lobmeyer trying to see if he can get involved as well. But definitely a 4-way fight with the likes of these 3 McLarens and that Ferrari 296 trailing on the edge. You've got to be careful about track limits here. You can see a little bit of enthusiastic use of the exit curve from Manisha in that 25 car, and this circuit, it will bite you and it will be unforgiving. And when you've got so much of the race left to go, you really do have to be mindful of how that ends up playing out. So we'll see whether or not any drivers do get any penalties in terms of corner cuts, because that chicane is so easy to cut, because you really do have to absolutely jump over that first curb to really get the car settled. It's sort of counterintuitive, but by taking the entire car across the width of that curb, what you do is you get the suspension in a place where you're less off balance. It's not a case of all the load is being transmitted through one side of the car and then you get to the next apex and all the load is being transferred through the other side of the car. If you really chuck the car through that opening sequence at the very end of the outer chicane, you balance the load a little bit better, it gets a bit more settled, but someone that can't settle right now is that McLaren of Berzakowski just behind this fight with Walsingham, trying to make the move, and he has done. And I'll tell you what, Oscar Tringali fancies a piece of this in the 296 as well. Aggressive defence from the McLaren of Berzakowski, trying to make sure he doesn't lose 2 positions in almost as many corners, and slams the door shut, and the number 36 car will have to settle back into position. Then as drive-through, I said he was flirting with the track limits, and it has unfortunately come to bite him as Manisha, the first one, only 18 minutes in to get a drive-through penalty. Meanwhile, it is Manson versus Tanvin Zahaka. Will go on board with De Campo, who's watching this, with licking his lips to see if he can find an opportunity. Down in towards Aqua Minerale they go. The Audi little bit, oh, you can see having to fight the back of the car on the entry there. We see Tinko van der Velde struggling with a little bit of pace further up the field. Maybe similar story for that number 31 car, but does manage to maintain position, at least for the time being. And the McLaren again, very settled, very planted through that part of the lap. But how good is the Audi in these flat out sections? And the answer is it's pretty handy. So difficult for these McLarens. They clearly got a good overall package, but just not something that's typically got the strength that it needs to really be able to apply the pressure for a move, because some of these other cars are just a little bit too speedy and able to get away. And Manisha already serving his drive-through penalties. A disappointment there for the number 25 car. Battle between the likes of Hoffman, Rainier and Trevor Wenham, all hanging on just outside of those top 10 positions. Oh, as that is a scrap kicking off in the background. That's Valentin Barrier now getting down the inside of Tajdain in towards turn 4 they go, and makes it look easy for the Yassit Esports car. And the number 12 gets himself in towards P16 then. And another battle is heating up. He may have dropped away initially, but Castorino, like I say, last man to win a race in Season 10, dominated in the new McLaren. That's where we really got a first glimpse of how that pace was looking. And right now, for Niels Niox, he is getting a little bit of a hurry up from the Garage 59 McLaren. Very nice livery, obviously in game one, but still nice the same. And you can see it's so tricky to follow through that chicane when you're that close to someone, because you can't see the apex, and it is such a fine line between disaster about those curves biting you and going through there with grace and decorum, like you're walking into a dinner hall. That the drivers, you know, you're stuck on the rear bumper of another car, and if you just get it a little bit wrong, all of a sudden that can be your race done. You can go from being the hunter to being rather stricken and vulnerable in the gravel trap or in the wall, potentially in some of those sequences. So see how quickly, and see Hoffman, very early pit stop, undercut Century for the number 11 car in that BMW. This was not for a penalty. Walsingham looking to do the same as well. So very interesting. Are these drivers maybe think that those tyres can go pretty long into this race, looking to get the tyre swap done sooner rather than later, and then push on in this upcoming stint? We'll have to wait and see how that plays out for them, because that does seem very early, as Norida trying to recover his way through the field. He got the move done over Neuwirth, but Neuwirth, I don't think quite having anything to be said with that one on the entry towards turn 4. He can't do it. Hutchinson, in actual fact, the one applying some more pressure, and the man that's getting the back end out in that Mercedes just behind is the one that's been slapped with a 15-second penalty from the stewards. And the number 9 car of Soltsov for causing a collision, and I do believe that was for the shenanigans that we actually saw down towards turn 4 just a few laps ago. So the stewards still looking to try to catch up on some of these penalty scenarios. They do tend to be rather busy in the Pro Series. We get fantastic action, but it certainly does keep them on their toes. And I am seeing a 5-second penalty for Trafka in the number 22 car. And I'll be perfectly honest, I have no idea what that's for. So whether or not there's anybody watching in the chat that may be able to answer that one for me, because that was the penalty where I definitely saw that there was something going on. We did have 2 5-second penalties quite early on in the race. White flag for the Carrecas. What on earth is happening further down the order? And that is, oh my goodness, that's Castorino in the wall! Castorino in the wall. Eric Delfanda, Whitehead, Omashima, Bischoff, Carpenter all benefiting. He's going to rejoin. Very awkward Trevor Wenham, almost colliding with his fellow McLaren, and the Italian driver that was looking to apply the pressure to Niels Niox, who seemingly has come out relatively unscathed, will go for a replay, trying to see. Oh my goodness, it was getting very busy. Who on earth was that? Was that Luke Whitehead? I think it may have been, and I'm sure that the stewards are going to be saying something about that. Eric Delfanta breathing a sigh of relief, and that was Luke Whitehead in the other McLaren, who of course had been scything his way up the order. And Amadeo Castorino, who of course was involved in that contact with Noah Reader earlier on. And so I'm sure Noah Reader would actually argue a little bit calmer on that front to the Italian driver. Of course, we'll see what the steward's perspective is on that one in a minute. But I'll tell you what, I'd be very surprised if at least one driver doesn't come out of that situation with a penalty. I'm sure the stewards, when they do get round to looking at that, will be reviewing that one very, very intensely. For reference, they've made it to about 5.5 minutes through the race, so they've got quite the chunk of work to do. But I tell you what, Castorino and the day that he is having, not getting any better, because he's got the likes of Valentin Barrier applying the pressure, and Sasha Vassner, of course, in the Mercedes. Although more cars going to the pit lane, they definitely want to go for that undercut, don't they? We'll see Sasha Vassner in the Mercedes. Sorry, had good grunt under the bonnet of this car earlier on. It's number 19 car looking to go towards the outside. Does he? Castorino not going to make it too easy, but of course driving slightly wounded now, does go very deep through the sector, and he is going to put it in the gravel. And the Italian driver, the man that showed exactly what his McLaren is capable of, that really set the benchmark at the tail end of season 10. Disastrous start to Season 11 for him. I'm sure he'll just be wanting to see the back of this one in the near future, I do imagine. So we'll keep up with the stewards and see how they are getting on. And briefly, we have just a moment of peace, more or less. We've got Lloyd's Rainier coming under pressure from Trevor Wenham, but not quite enough for an overtake. So, just at this point in time, a little bit of an announcement on the channel. At some point in the near future, we will be moving over to Twitch for these races. So do keep an eye out on social media, on Twitter, the Discord server. I'm sure there'll be announcements in one form or another when we are going to be moving over to that, because we've had the German streams hosted over there on twitch.tv/lowfuelmotorsport for a long time with our very, very fantastic, wonderful German commentators over there, doing wonders as Whitehead comes into the pits, as does the man we were on board with, Trevor Wenham. And we will be looking to accompany our German friends over in the LFM community on there in the future. So do head over to the channel, give a follow to them in the meantime to show them some support, and also so that you don't miss out on the future races when we do head over there. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of information out there to let you know when that transition is going to be. But it just was a little bit of a heads up to all of you that have joined for this season's action and want to stay in touch with what the rest of Season 11 has to offer. Because I tell you what, if it's anything like the opening 25 minutes of this race, you're going to want to stick around, because we have some fantastic stuff going on here, and I'm sure it's going to continue for the rest of the season. A little bit of a scrap here between De Campo, Tringali, and Walsingham further down the order. Penalties being handed out. So 5 seconds to the 32 car of Philip Gross. And stop and go 30-second penalty of Brian Kingsley. That'll be speeding in the pit lane, I do believe. And I think we may actually even be getting another follow-up in just a moment on another penalty, but we shall hold fire on that one and see how it plays out. Interestingly, let's see whereabouts is Hoffman on those fresh tyres, who went for a very big undercut. He is going to get his way past Trevor Wenham then. By the looks of it, Luke Whitehead appearing far out in front in that Veloce McLaren, but will he be coming under scrutiny from the stewards in the near future? Very, very possibly. Yellow flags out for more drivers. Oh, there's big contacts. That was Tringali and the Audi. Oh, several cars going off. And the Walsingham trying to go around the outside now as well, as it all kicks off. One more McLaren. We'll have to try to get a replay on this in a moment. My goodness, I'm going to have to go to helicam. There's so much going on here to watch down before they go. And as soon as we turned one, they're all in single file like nothing ever happened. Absolutely typical. But Walsingham somehow making his way to the front of that train. What on earth was going on there, as Oscar Tringali now being overtaken by the next of the Veloce McLarens. I believe that may actually be Grant Carrecas, who is a lap ahead, of course. So that's a very, very dangerous scenario for him. So let's see if we can try to catch what on earth was happening down towards turn 1, and unfortunately it was way too late on that front, disappointingly. But my goodness, that was a lot of action that kicked off there. And poor Grant Carrecas, who was just trying to make his way through nice and peacefully, got a lot more for his money than I think he was hoping for. You see there's Eric Del Fanta a little bit further up there as well. So yeah, very difficult to tell exactly what was going on there with those drivers, but it looked to all kick off with those exiting the pit lane, some of them out of position, of course, and we'll have to try to recuperate after that one. I'm sure the drivers are as well. 15-second penalty for Castorino then, and I don't find that to be any surprise. And who is that coming into the pits now? That is George Boothby. So it was your race leader that was amidst all of that. No wonder that he was hanging fire. Tingo van der Velde coming in just behind, so is Niels Nijholt. So these drivers wanting to make sure they cover off his undercuts, but other drivers still happy to stay out for just a bit longer. So tricky stuff for them. We also had a 15-second penalty. So 15-second penalty for number 37. That was to Castorino. We also had a 5-second penalty to the number 13 car. That was in the hands of, as we have a yellow flag out for the number 9. That's sort of exiting the pits. Number 13 car, whereabouts Are they in the grid or have they left the session? And I don't know. We do have one car missing from the server. So it may well be a case of that number 13 car is the one that has left, because I cannot see their number in the server whatsoever. So unless there's anybody else in the chat that has some information to pass on to me, of course, sometimes do have some very, very kind souls that like to keep a little bit of a close eye on other perspectives for me. So if there is any information on that, then feel free to pass it on over. Meanwhile, your current race leader, Eric Delfanta, that is, of course, not the actual race leader in the grand scheme of things, but he is running around in relatively clean air, as he has the recovering Mercedes of Noah Eder just up ahead, who, of course, was in around these positions before. Now he finds himself practically a lap down. Meanwhile, at the other end of the scale, we have the likes of George Boothby, who's been jumped by Tinko van der Velde in the pits. So, George Boothby, I'm assuming, either had a little bit of a slow pit entry, maybe Tinko took a bit of a gamble, either that, or he didn't quite slot into his pit box correctly. But now we have a battle between these two. That's not the camera I wanted. There we go. There's the Audi in this number 18 car. It's still showing. Excuse me, that is Caracas. That is only 0.2 seconds behind. So that is the Veloce car that is in hot pursuit. George Boothby finds himself enjoying life on the exit of Aqua Minerale, slightly further up the order, but the battle for P2 is absolutely on at the moment. As the drivers have done so much battling, caused so much drama, that temporarily my voice decided to completely close up for a moment there, but we shall battle on, much like the rest of this field is, and keep up with exactly the sort of action that we have had from start to finish. We've only just got to the halfway point in this race, and George Boothby finds himself now feeling in a pretty happy place. And what about this man, the reigning champion? He's not looking like he's on target to come away with another race of victory and start off Season 11 in the sort of form that we have come to expect from him in Season 10, but he is looking very, very competitive and very, very much keen to move on into P2. But Tinko, he knows how to drive quick, he knows how to defend hard, and I'm sure these two are going to put on a spectacular battle as more and more drivers are starting to come into the pits, as Marco Bischoff now, your new race leaders, likes of Eric Delfanta, to complete their pit stops. And whereabouts does Delfanta appear? And he has appeared just ahead of Luke Whitehead. Of course, we are still yet to see the exact results and nature of maybe how things will play out. And the BMW just up ahead of them is that of Niels Niox, the number 16 car, who's done well to keep that BMW up there, because it does seem like the mid-engine cars around here are just able to perform a little bit faster, a little bit better at the moment. And you can see he's only a couple of seconds away from the battle for P2, P3 in this race. So still very much all on the cards if the likes of Caracas and Tinko do start to get into a very hefty scrap. Again, that McLaren looking very, very comfortable as they head through the very empty outer chicane. 7 seconds now the lead for George Boothby, who is loving life and looking to add another one to his very decorated tally, like I mentioned earlier. This number 1 car of Caracas, the number 1 man on the LFM platform, number 1 man in the server, and your reigning champion. So there's a lot of authority right now in the cockpit of this Veloce Esports McLaren. It might be a new car to him, but I tell you what, driving quickly and competitively is nothing new to this young man, trying to see if he can find his way past the Williams Esports Audi towards turn 1. But again, that Audi just a little bit too quick in a straight line. Meanwhile, Marco Bischoff emerging out of the pits in between the likes of Omashima and Hoffman, and see whereabouts does the like of Vastner appear. Is it going to be a dive from the McLaren of Valentin Barrier? And not quite there. And so Sasha will hold on to P15 for the time being. Just check out the yellow flags. That is just for cars exiting the pit lane, so no harm done. They're a little bit busy further down the order for the likes of Lucas Bergold, who may about to be dived. Big send from the Lamborghini there of Philip Gross, who goes silently up the inside, number 32 car, wasting no time at all. Of course, tyres up to temperature for that car, and they do move themselves up in towards 33rd position. Narzinski briefly brought out the white flag there for a moment, but it doesn't look like anything too catastrophic in the grand scheme of things. No more penalties dished out so far from our stewards, but they are gradually working their way towards some of the more notable incidents, shall we say, that we have had so far in this race. I'm sure they'll be taking quite a bit of time to make sure they get the right decision. They can see so much more than we can. Someone that can only see Mercedes badges right now is Valentin Barrett, looking towards the outside of Ravazza. Surely not in the number 12 car. Defense from the Mercedes. He's got a little bit deep though. Fantastic switchback from the Frenchman as we go to the external camera. Who's going to be on the pace on the exit of turn 18 there, rounding out towards the final corner. Of course, it's a little flank kink. Barely even a corner, but for these guys, as they wrap their way around, you can see it just shortens up the run for that Mercedes a little bit. We know it's quick in a straight line, but Valentin in that McLaren, he's coming back. He's got the inside line towards turn 1. They go. Who's more confident on the brakes? It's going to go the way of the Frenchman. Does he get it full put together? It's a little bit of a compromised line. Vasta can't do anything on the exit, trying to use all the torque underneath the bonnet of that Mercedes. Is showing the nose, but he can't do anything in the end in towards turn 4. And it will stick with Valentin as Florian Duacop now dropping down the order. I do believe, I assume that must have been for coming into the pits. I didn't see anything too dramatic in the grand scheme of things, but my goodness, look at this. Battle heating up. We've got Ida, Pendant, Trafka, Duacop, Tans Hacker all in this train. And Giant Hutchinson has just brought himself along for good measures, just in case we didn't have enough cars in this battle. So, with everyone having done their pit stop, George Buthy resumes his race lead, 8 seconds ahead of Cinco van der Velde, who has managed to get a little bit of breathing space between himself and Korekis. Niels Narks still down in P4 with Luke Whitehead in hot pursuit, fastest man on circuit last time around. He may have a penalty coming his way, we're not sure, but one way or another, you can't say that he has not put the hammer down and not reminded us exactly why it is that he is as quick and as much of a winningest driver in the Pro Series as he is. Let's see, look at this train of cars, absolutely nose to tail. I think it might be Hutchinson that's in the best position to make a move as they head towards Ravazza, the Aston Martin. It's decent in straight lines. So you think about move towards the inside. You can see he was a little bit later on the brakes and really having to try and monitor and judge the distance. But maybe towards turn 1, another opportunity will open up. Nothing so much for Grantas Korekis. Luke Whitehead, though, towards Tosa Corner, absolutely pinned onto the back of Niels Niox in that BMW. As Hoffman versus Bischoff still kicking off. Castorino near the back of his Golf livery teammate of Lois Rainier. And I think it's all kicking off. I shouldn't have looked away. Tanspencer Hacker through the gravel. It's going to compromise Neuwirth. And you see Hutchinson had to back out that one. Hutchinson, is he going to try to make it 3 wide? He's thinking about it. He's a smart cookie, the Canadian driver, heading down the inside. I spoke too soon almost. But they thankfully managed to get through there just about okay. Whether or not there'll be a little bit of a penalty dished out there for the Canadian in towards turn 4 they went. And Tanspencer Hacker, the British driver, after getting it all wrong. Oh dear. And I think that's going to be the end of the Audi's day. And indeed, he has gone back to the pits. So disappointing stuff from him. Obviously not happy with how things are played out. And I had a feeling it was coming. A 15-second time penalty for Luke Whitehead. And I'll tell you what, the man that is happiest about that at the moment is Niels Niox, because he has got that McLaren filling up his rearview mirror and he doesn't need to worry. And Niels Niox, he's a mature head on those shoulders, and he has let Luke Whitehead go through. And interestingly, he was actually braking quite early. I assume he was keeping the power down at the same time, maybe trying to generate a little bit extra front tyre temperature in there as well. But he does let the McLaren go through. He could try to stick with him and see if he can allow Luke Whitehead to pull him along just a bit away from Eric Del Fanta in the pursuing McLaren just behind. And we've also had no, excuse me, there's the same 50-second time penalty for Castorino as what we had before, but we do have plenty of other incidents for the stewards to be catching up on. So they're making their way through. They have done some rapid work and got themselves up to 26 minutes through the race, so they have closed the gap themselves to around 15 minutes of stewards in their own race against time. Every single thing about the LFM platform and the Pro Series especially is all high-octane action, and even the stewards having to try to fight their way for every thousandth of a second that they can save in trying to do all this live processing of penalties, and incredible work that they do for us indeed, enabling us to have all of this at our fingertips. Hutchinson still on the back of Neuwirth further down the order. We've only got about 3 kind of battles really kicking off here at the moment. Karekas, Delfanta, and Tringali have all got themselves in a pretty close spot for making a move. I think it's going to be the same old story for Grantis Karekas. That Audi just a little bit too fast, but I tell you what, this McLaren definitely has the legs and pace overall around an entire lap over the BMW. Maybe that BMW just going through its front tyres a bit too much. And that is, of course, no criticism of Niels' driving, but it is sometimes the nature of these front-engine cars. They do, they take more life out of those front tyres. They have a much more balanced platform that you can really kind of have confidence with. You can chuck it into the corners and you'll be pretty confident that it'll stick consistently. As meanwhile, Castorino bringing out the white flag there for a moment. We'll try and see if we can grab a replay of this one. I think Luke Whitehead has actually made a mistake in the meantime because that gap had closed. Oh my goodness, that was a jump and a half. Yeah, update 1.9 doesn't quite protect you from curbs enough for that, unfortunately. And Castorino showing us his best rallycross skills, and even a little bit of stunt jump in there as well. But thankfully not too much in the way of harm done. I think 1.8 he may have actually been sent up into space from that one, but I think this time just a little bit of a jolt and a jump through the force feedback on his steering wheel, and settling down fairly quickly. Meanwhile, Eric Delfanta resuming that pressure being applied to the BMW up ahead, and disappointment there in the chat as well, I think, for Tanvin Zahaka in retirement from the race. You never want to see it for these drivers. They put a lot of time in to preparing. They give us some fantastic action, but unfortunately sometimes when so many goodies is on the line, and these drivers, if nothing else, like I say, they're perfectionists. They want every position that they can get their hands on, and sometimes it does come a little bit to blows. But I tell you what, Berzakowski, good run for him. There's more penalties being dished out. We'll review those in just a moment. The Armamentario number 33 car now sent towards the outside of Emanuele Tajdain in that 23. Trying to see side by side in towards turn 1. They go, and contact on the exit. I could see that one coming from a mile off. And the Porsche's Longmire says, thank you very much, lads. I'll have 2 for the price of 1. And makes his way up into 21st position for the number 14 car, but not what either of those drivers would have wanted to happen there. And I'm sure the stewards sigh just a little bit inside as they realise another inquiry is added to their ongoing tally, which, speaking of which, we've also had a 10-second time penalty for the number 35 car, and that belongs to, I do a little bit of scrolling, jiggery-pokery here and there, that is Lucas Bergold in the Ferrari 296. I don't think we caught what happened there, but it was for causing a collision. So, really something there that the stewards weren't too happy about Lucas getting up to in a recent lap. So, checking back in at the upper end of the grid. So you can see Whitehead still holding on to P4 there. Bear in mind, he has that 15-second time penalty, so everyone in pretty good proximity. It's going to be a while. That 15-second time penalty, he is going to fall quite a chunk down the order, and Niels, he may have let him go past him, but he is making full use of that kind of almost additional DRS-style effect that he's getting from McLaren in front that is just dragging him along. And Eric Delfanta may be in hot pursuit. Not as much as this man, though. Lois Rainier trying to send it towards the inside of Trevor Wenham. Can't get the job done. And in the end, we'll still have to settle back in towards P12. Of course, there'll be many a benefactor from Castorino's penalty at the tail end of the race. They'll be all added onto their race time, as they've now completed each of their respective pit stops. So if you do see a penalty cleared from something appeared early on in the race, that is not because the stewards have been ever so kind to remove it, but there has been served in the pit stop. On occasion, I do believe that if there is something worthy of an appeal, that the stewards do look to withdraw a penalty and then perhaps reapply it if they do come to the same conclusion, if it is going to be served at a pit stop. But in this case, all of those penalties cleared so far purely just in the forms of that being added on to their stop time. Meanwhile, this scrap continuing to build as we have Drexler ahead of Tajdain. Noah Ida, who is continuing to recover. 5-second penalty for Noah Ida in the number 21 car. My headphones just exploded, and I have a horrible feeling that they may have done for all of you listening at home as well. I do apologise about that. For those maybe a bit new to ACC, we have the wonderful, some people call it a shotgun. It always seems a bit more like a firework to me, but one way or another, it leaves you dazed and confused by the time that the sound finishes. So apologies if that did cause anyone to become slightly more deaf this evening. But hopefully effects should be temporary. Much like what it looks to be, that penalty for Noah Ida, because whilst he may have 5 seconds added to his tally, I tell you what, he is looking to show off all of the pace he demonstrated in qualifying at the beginning of this race. Move his way up the order to the outside. The German driver goes in that new car that he is driving around the outside, very close between the pair of them, and he gets the job done. Fantastic stuff. And I'll tell you what, it's Toby Lang now that's trying to go forward, switch back to he can't get to the inside in time. He allows the number 24 German driver to get a move done potentially towards turn 4. No, he hands it around the outside, switch back again. Now it's Pendon on the attack in towards Tosa Curve in the BMW, but he can't make it stick either. So it will be Noah Ida that gets past and sets off in hot pursuit of Jan Drexler, which is the way rate at which he is moving up through the field. You would have to think he is going to be there sooner rather than later. 40 minutes or so on the clock for drivers to try to see if they can get anything else out of their respective races. George Boothby having the time of his life, still lapping in the low 40s. Only Luke Whitehead, the only other driver, alongside Marco Bischoff actually, able to do that. As Lang again looking towards the outside, can't make anything happen towards the chicane, but look at this train building up. BMW had a good run there briefly for a moment, but couldn't quite make it stick in the end. So 10.5 second lead for Boothby. Van der Velde in P2. Correcus! I thought Bendon was setting one up the inside there towards Ravazza. Doesn't quite come off in this instance though. And Whitehead is sitting in P4 at the moment. We know he will look to drop down the order momentarily, and that might be the case as well for Tajdain, who got passed by Noah Ida at this point on the circuit. Just a lap ago. Toby Lang looking to take the Limitless Speed Drivers team one step further, repeat the exact same move that you saw ahead of him. He was not quite as committed on the brakes, so he's allowed Tajdain to get away from him just a little bit there. And I tell you what, it's the likes of Trafka that'll be finding the opportunities here, trying to see if he can allow Pendon just to get a little bit stuck with Lang and find a gap, find an opportunity. And that's exactly what Florian Durakop as well is actually trying to do in that tussle for position as well. As they climb up towards Piratella once more. Correcca still 0.4 of a second is the gap between himself and Tinko van der Velde. Same story for Del Fanta versus Niels Niox. And I also do believe that we might have some other penalties on the way in due course. And we're only a few minutes away from actually the stewards having managed to catch up. Incredible stuff from them. Of course, we always have this sort of ebbs and flows aspects of the way in which, you know, we tend to have a lot more incidents at the beginning of the race versus the tail end of it. But one way or another, it's certainly a lot for the stewards to get through, and it has come through in the form of a 5-second penalty for Matti De Campo in that number 15 car. So not happy with the Italian driver in that McLaren. And speaking of McLarens, Luke Whitehead, despite showing tremendous pace throughout this race, this second stint really has not worked out for him very well at all. has Narcs done a fantastic job to stick with him. Delphanta very much doing the same. And Whitehead, after being in the low 40s for many, many a lap, now only capable of doing a 40.7. Meanwhile, compare that to your race leader, that's 0.7 of a second off the pace. Within the same team, almost the same kind of credentials, extremely experienced and well awarded championship competitors from the Pro Series. Castorino has potentially just done the move on his in-game teammate of Lloyd Rainier. He has. So let's see if we can catch what was happening there. Between our drivers. I need to do a little bit of jiggery pokery at mine, excuse me everybody, and there we go. Hopefully we'll be able to see. So we're on board with Castorino coming in towards Acqua Minerale, and there you go. It's just a mistake on the entry. I said this is a circuit that keeps you on your toes. I did actually briefly see a white flag out for George Boothby, although I've also just seen one for Luke Whitehead, so that may just be a general broadcasting flag. But Castorino not wasting any time at all, and has managed to escape just a little bit up the road as a result of that contact. Meanwhile, Nils Niox applying the pressure to Luke Whitehead. Of course, he doesn't need to make the move, as that 15-second time penalty is going to drop Whitehead down the order, but Nils will very much be looking to still show exactly why it is that he is one of the most formidable drivers on the grid. And even taking a car that maybe naturally isn't at its happiest around this circuit, but hopefully if he does continue to stick around with us during the remainder of the season, we'll see. Maybe there'll be circuits where that BMW starts to come strong again. I would have to imagine that there would be. Kicking off all again in this scrap for P26 from Lang, Pendant, Trafka and Florian Duacop, as they all try to see if they can find any advantage for one over the other. You can see Hutchinson is almost joining this group as well on the exit. It's very close between Toby Lang and Tajdain. I think this may give an opportunity to Lang. He's got to be brave on the brakes. It's hard defense from the Italian driver, and he's not going to allow Nico to go by. What at Pendant? He was almost in the diffuser. He practically is in the diffuser of this car, and I can show you how much he is. That's the wrong one. There, no, it is. There we go. There. One camera, another will show us what's going on. And now, typically, it's not even the camera I want, because I think Lobmeyer and the likes of Berzakowski have just swapped positions further down the order through the very anti-outer chicane. So let's see, does that Porsche get unsettled? No, it's Acqua Minerale again, and the Porsche of Berzakowski manages to find his way down the inside. In actual fact, easy move in the end. The Porsche didn't want anything to do with that. Lifts off, allows Berzakowski to go through. It says, "You're faster than me, thank you very much, and I shall let you have that spot." But Troy still, those ones in particular, still just outside of the top 20, so maybe for some additional bragging rights, the pair of them look to apply the pressure to Mattia De Campo, who has got that 5-second penalty, and based on the current margins, would actually finish just behind both of them. So these two still able to benefit from that penalty of the car in front. And that really shows you always why it's a case of never stop pushing, because you really don't know how it's going to end up playing out later in the stint. And yeah, we've got a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not Luke is carrying any damage. It's the sort of thing where I imagine the level of damage he had, he wouldn't have repaired in the pit, but that very much isn't to suggest that he came away with none whatsoever. It can be a little bit tricky when it comes to the visual outputs from ACC on that front. Meanwhile, Philip Gross applying the pressure to Voltec Neuwirth in that Aston Martin. It's continuing to struggle for a little bit of pace around here. Previously, Aston Martin, one of the absolute best, maybe still for endurance races, but overall not quite looking like the strong package that we were very much used to seeing a good couple of years ago now, where it was all about the philosophy of high rake, high rear wing, and you're off and ready to go. And of course, also to set, I think it was TC2 onto either 7 or 8, depending on whether or not you wanted a little bit more of a bite or a kick from the rear end of the car as well. Very, very forgiving car to drive, generally speaking. Someone that's not feeling all too forgiving at all is Toby Lang, who once again is applying the pressure to the McLaren of Tajdain behind. These two, if they want to benefit from that 5-second penalty of Norida, they have to work together perhaps in those final few minutes. It's aggression, though, from Toby Lang, who finally gets the move done. In actual fact, it's Tajdain that's coming under pressure. Pendant found his way past. Well, he almost wanted to go for another one on the run up to turn 4, but he couldn't do anything about it. What about the likes of Trafka? Tried, oh, and there's contact with number 27, and that's Florian Duacop that has sent the 22 car around. And I'm sure, again, words will be said about that one. I was just about to say that the stewards may have finally caught up and be able to have a little bit of a breather. No such service from the Pro Series. It's a case of we need you in full force once again. And you can see, we'll try to see if we can catch Florian's on board here. And you can see just on the exit, tags that left rear corner and then pushes on. And of course, Hutchinson again, I said he was good in those, trains-like scenarios, and he manages to just time his exit perfectly, just gets the right balance of aggression and defense, and he snatches 2 very, very easily. Still only for 28th position, so not quite where the Pro Series race winner would have wanted to be, but nonetheless, still in a good position regardless. Meanwhile, Del Fanta up to the back of Nils Knox in that BMW now, so whilst maybe a 12-second gap for your race leader, very much still on the cards on the fight for P5, well actually be effectively P4 by the time Luke Whitehead serves or has his 15-second time penalty added to his tally. Meanwhile, Manson almost looks to apply the pressure on Jade, who's managed to recover up to P16 now in the number 3 car. I think got a little bit bogged down at the beginning of the race, but has managed to fight his way back through the field and get himself into a little bit of a better spot, but coming under pressure from the number 29 car in these closing stages. Only 3.5 minutes left on the clock. This man has had barely any coverage on screen whatsoever and missed a consistency. 40.3s, 40.2s over all of these laps. Just a couple laps left to go for George Boothby to finish putting together what has been a masterclass drive so far. Hopefully going to have him commentator cursed somebody here. Otherwise that would be a big surprise going the way of Tinko in these closing stages, who's also driven phenomenally but just hasn't seemingly quite had the pace of those that very leading McLaren, but has at least done enough for the time being to hold off Carreras. The reigning champion Philip Gross sending one on the inside of Neuwirth, who will look to fight back on the exit. Did get that better line, and the Aston Martin, it's no slouch in these straights. It will get a bit of a slipstream. The 296 of Lucas Bergol watching with a fantastic amount of interest towards Ravazza, and neither one of them able to get up the inside. But will there be a move towards turn 1 on this next run? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to break it down into a couple of stages here, because first fight towards turn 1 that we're going to be interested in is the likes of Duacop versus Tajdain. White flag for Norida. I didn't see anything too significant though, so I think he may be okay. Florian Duacop did try to make the move, couldn't get alongside enough though. What about the likes of Neuwirth, Bergold and Philip Gross? And they stay exactly as they were. What is happening there, though, for Karpinen and Hoffman further up the order in C? So this is getting close towards Aqua Minerale once more. Is there a wide moment for Hoffman? It didn't look like he went particularly wide. We got to that corner, so we're going through Piratella now. Oh, that's where the kick of oversteer was, and Karpinen actually sending it towards the outside. He's got all the momentum in the world, and in the end, Hoffman, I wonder if he even lifted off the throttle there to make sure he didn't get a corner cutting penalty. Can't see how close the warnings are for these drivers. Meanwhile, George Boothby is on his final lap. I do believe it's going to be pretty close on the timer, but it doesn't look like he may be on his last lap. Just as I say that, and well, that was clearly, I think, why he was erring on the side of caution. Hoffman on the final lap of the race, what was on for a top 10 finish for the BMW driver. Or has he run out of fuel? That's the only other thing I could think of. I wonder if he's underfueled the car because he hasn't served a drive-through. Nothing's popped up for him to clear. So I think... Oh, that's even more disappointing. He has actually come into the pits, I think, if my thinking is right. So we get another sound explosion. They're all kicking off today. That may be the reason why he has had to come into the pits. A disaster for the BMW, who is dropping down the order like a stone. Battle in towards turn 1 still for that lead. For that trailing sequence cars in the top 30. As a yellow flag for Lobmeyer dips wheel in the gravel. But for this man today, it's been absolutely pixel perfect. For the number 6 car, George Boothby is a race winner here in the Case King Pro Series once again. And he gets his championship in Season 11. Oh, not quite, as the engineer lied to me. Despicable stuff from the game there. And there will actually be one more lap. I hope that doesn't catch anyone else out when it comes to fuel, because now we'll be starting the final lap of the race. George can't back off the gas just yet. In actual fact, he may have had enough of a gap in hand to lift off and let that gap open up a bit. Del Fanta trying to look up towards the inside of Niles, because whilst they may not be battling overall with Luke Whitehead, it's still to play for what it will be the fight for P4, McLaren versus BMW. And we have a little bit more racing action to deal with than we were originally anticipating. Manson versus Jardier on run towards turn 1. It looks like a pretty good tow for the number 29 car. Looking at the inside, he can't make it stick. What about Walsingham? He can't do anything either. So the McLarens in that trio of a train stay as they were. And amusement in the chat, understandably so. And it was an unusual situation. The engineer usually does not quite lie in that respect. Pennant looking up the inside on Norita. Thank goodness we had the extra lap, because we're treated to all these final lap fights, and the BMW will get himself up into 24th position. As meanwhile, Trafka trying to make a move on Fabio Starr. He's going to send one to the inside. Is he? Not quite. So we will regroup with this man from one lap ago. It's going to be exactly the same circumstances, but George Boothby is going to win and to get his championship off to the perfect start in Season 11. He wins here in Imola in the new McLaren, and what a fantastically dominant drive from him. Tinko van der Velde does manage to hold off the Veloce Esports teammate, the reigning champion Korekas, to take P2 in the Audi. Korekas has to take P3 in the end. Whitehead charges to P4 on track, but will be dropped down the order. Niels Norris does hold on to what will become P4, followed by P5 for Del Fanta. They all get towards the line, but I need to look at these because look at 2 McLarens heading into Ravassa for the last time. Let's go on board the rear diffuser of Jardio, who's getting a wonderful view on the rear bumper as he watches his new sister teammate trying to see if he can make his way up towards P16. It'll be a drag race towards the line between these two, but I think Manson may just about have enough in hand as they get towards the line. It's going to be so close. 400ths of a second separating them as they cross the timing beam, and it's going to be close as well as Norita. Norita's lets the Lamborghini go by there. Either that or that was the send of Giant Hutchinson's life. Although 5-second penalty for Norita, of course, wouldn't have made a difference anyway. So Hutchinson is going to get up to 26th position. No, excuse me, that's not Norita there, is it? It was Norita. The time board just a little bit delayed with all that in hand. Florian Duakop ends up staying behind Tajnain in the end. Trafka continues to try to make a move over Fabio Steiner in front of him, but can't do so. And as our final drivers round out the lap, the opening round of the Pro Series comes to a close and puts on a stellar performance once more, and we've been treated to some fantastic action once again. And yes, a little bit of a miscalculation on my part, but I will only marginally excuse myself on the principle that the engineer in-game got it wrong, and the computer actually managed to mistally the timer count on that one. So I'm going to give myself just a little bit of leeway on that front. Not too much, but just a little bit just to make myself feel just a little bit better. But we will go through the results in just a moment. I don't think, despite all the chaos in those closing stages, the stewards didn't apply any extra penalties, I don't believe. Let's just checking on the timer. I think that they were fully up to date by the time we got to the end of all of that. And we will look to have a look through the race results in just a moment. What a fantastic season opener for Season 11. The Cage King Pro Series never fails to put on a spectacular show. It is always, if you want GT3 racing on ACC at its finest, you want to see the absolute best of the best going toe-to-toe and going for very, very hard battles every single week, this is the place to be in the LFM Case King Pro Series, without a shadow of a doubt. Like I say, in some point in the near future, we will be moving over to Twitch to join our German friends streaming over there. So make sure to follow twitch.tv/lowfuelmotorsports for when we make that transition over to there, so that you can keep up with all of the action. But I'm sure, like I say, over on the likes of Twitter, Discord, you name it, there'll be various announcements going out to make sure that you are all in the know as to when that is happening. Hopefully the results will come through in just a moment, if I'm lucky. I will do just a little bit of a double check on that to see if maybe there's something that hasn't quite gelled up in the way that I was expecting it to, but I think that should all be fine, so maybe it's just taking a little bit of time to process and give us official results. We'll also check to see if we have anybody lurking around for an interview. It's always nice to speak to our drivers, so if you do have contact with any of them and want to give them a little bit of encouragement, join us in the commentary box, then do feel free to give them a nudge. And right at that point in time, ACC exploded in the background. And we do, in fact, we have our race winner who's decided to join us. So we'll make sure to bring him in just a second. Bringing him in, Mr. George Boothby, starting off the season in the perfect fashion. Dominant drive from you in the 70-20S GT3 Evo. Congratulations to you, sir. You must be absolutely chuffed to bits with that one. Apologies, George, just for a moment. For some reason, you're not coming through on stream, and I don't know why. And I think just give me uno momento. Try again now. Oh no! Why does everything have to explode? It's there's been a couple of issues at this end, and I don't know why it's continuing to be a pain on this front. Let's try again now. George, can you hear me okay? Oh, of course, brilliant. Now I can't hear you because I've put the output to something else. Oh dear, I don't know why it's decided to do this in the clone stages. I do apologise, everybody. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to George in just a moment. Either that, or I'll just end up relaying exactly how excited about that victory he is. Why on earth? Actual fact, I do have one possible last scenario to double check. This is true. I think. Try again.
Hello.
Hooray!
Yay!
It all comes good in the end. Right. So we get back into it then. Of course, big congratulations as usual. Thank you for your patience in the comms box as well. As we get through a little bit of additional issues there. But yes, how are you feeling after that one?
I'm so happy because. Yesterday I was really, really ill. I had like a horrible migraine. So I spent yesterday just chilling, relaxing, getting better. Same as today. It's like when I get a migraine, it's like having a hangover when you recover. So today I was all groggy and like not feeling it. So all my teammates were like practicing and stuff, and I just thought I'll just let them make a setup and I'll jump in. And it ended up. They were a bit late because they're practicing for SRO this weekend, so they were late making a setup. So what I just did in the end, I thought, oh, screw it. I'm just going to throw like 5 or 6 setups I've got for this car into the Imola folder, and I'll just try a few of them and see what works, right? So we get into the session, and I thought I loaded up a setup from Valentin. It had pretty much the exact same name as my Spa setup. So I loaded my Spa setup by accident, and I didn't notice. And then I'm in quali doing like nearly 280 kilometers an hour or something ridiculous down the straight. I just didn't even notice. I thought it was like the car was slippy. I thought, oh, maybe it's like a green track. It's like a slippy track. And then I look at the lap times and I'm like, what is happening? So I just I don't know. I did the most ridiculous time I've ever seen from this car at this track. I feel like now everyone knows who's watched my stream. They're all gonna, the setup shops and all the leaderboards are gonna go crazy now.
You've given away the tactical secret now.
I don't know. I just accidentally stumbled upon the most ridiculous setup ever, and it was so ridiculous. I had to like double check it because my team were like, "How did you go so fast in quali? We need your setup." And I'm looking at it. I'm like, what? 0 wing. That isn't correct. What? That can't be right because I'm on like this is like a fast downforcey track, and I'm running the minimum wing. And I was just scratching my head thinking, this can't be right. I cannot send this to my team. There must be an error. But it wasn't. I just accidentally loaded the wrong setup, and it turns out to be the most ridiculous setup ever. So that's how my race went, and it meant that I won by probably the most I've ever won in any LFM pro ever, and I just can't believe it.
Absolutely incredible. I'm so glad that we managed to fix the audio to gain these insights, because what a thing. So, happy accidents and all that. That is just absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, obviously, that you've got the very long run all the way out of Ravatsa sort of down towards turn 2, and that slippy setup is going to pay dividends there. But I agree that traditionally, very much having a car underneath you that's been able to cope with the cornering aspects here at Imola. Yeah, that's very much been the thing that you've needed, and whilst cars have benefited from good straight line speed, of course, it's just not something we're used to seeing for it to work out quite like it has. I mean, do you think it's just that this McLaren is maybe much more of a downforce powerhouse than you originally kind of thought it was?
That's what we were talking about on stream, like throughout the race. I was like, I wonder if this works somewhere else, like running this wing setup. But I feel like Imola's quite a unique situation because it does have quite a long straight, so you do pick up a lot of speed. And all the corners are like chicanes with big curves. And I guess because I'm running like really a flat neutral rake, it allows me to glide over curves a bit better maybe. And there's not many super fast corners apart from Aqua. So apart from that corner, I don't think I'm losing too much. I think I looked in the qualifying. I lost a 10th in the middle sector. That's it to like someone on maximum wing. So, and then in sector 1, I was like 3 temps quickest. Last sector 2 temps. So obviously it works. Yeah, I'm just amazed that we found this, and I'm going to try it on other tracks to see what happens.
Yeah, well, if you want to keep the tradition going, what you need to do is almost kind of double blind trial and just pick a random setup and see what happens as a result.
I don't know. I think my luck will run out pretty quick there if I just lucky mag every week.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, do not take setup or racing advice from the commentator who can't sort out their audio. So yeah, I mean, fantastic insight on that front. And it's one of those things where we're watching trackside. We were seeing that particularly during through that chicane, very anti-outer, we were comparing to your teammates and going on board with Korekis and yourself. And you're absolutely right. Your car just glided over those curves. It was very much like what we saw from Castorino and Monza at the tail end of last season, where just that McLaren would just seem so happy taking the curves. But in Corex's hands, it seemed a little bit more unsteady, whereas yours was just absolutely planted. So clearly, one form or another, that setup was working absolutely beautifully. And I mean, I imagine that this is probably a rather a sort of easy and obvious answer, but are you liking this new 720 SE? It seems to have worked out quite nicely for you so far. Of course, seen you be a bit of a Ferrari sort of specialist in the past. McLaren maybe the new hot prospect for the future?
Nah, it's a terrible car. No, I'm joking. No, I have had a lot of fun with it, to be honest. So it's what we use for SRO as well, so that's why I thought I'd choose it for the season. Just to become a bit more accustomed to it. Yeah, good start. So I hope I can just keep it up. I say that I think this is probably a fluke, more than likely, but hopefully in the next few races, when it's, I guess, a bit more set up fair and everyone knows what's going on, we can still get some good results.
Yeah, of course, I have no doubt. Of course, you are one of the most successful drivers in the Pro Series history, and we'll actually be going to a bit of a local track for going to Brands Hatch. What's the thoughts and feelings of the Macca for that one? Of course, it's not one we visit all too often. It's but a very, very fast, very fun circuit. So you think you could be in pretty good stead for that one?
If I'm honest, I'm not too knowledge on the BOP for this car around some tracks, but I've seen a few races here and there, and yeah, it seems pretty quick, so I can't see why I won't be hopefully fighting near the top. I'll just give it my all and see what happens, but this is, like I said, it's a crazy grid. Like, the amount of amazing drivers in here is absolutely insane, so I'm surprised none of the other Mechas sort of found this setup, but hey, we take them, and yeah, on to the next one, see what happens. Hopefully we can get a repeat result.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, start as you mean to go on. Yeah, fantastic stuff from you tonight, George. So yeah, big congratulations for taking another victory and adding it to that ever more glowing Pro Series tally that you've been building over the last few seasons. Great to have you back in the series. And yeah, and thank you for joining the Cosbox. Apologies for the slight hiccup at the beginning, so thank you for your patience on all that as well. And great to have all that insight over what turned out to be a rather confusing race in certain aspects for you, but definitely a very rewarding one. So yeah, big congratulations to you, and look forward to seeing you next week at Brands Hatch.
Cheers, man. Thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers, and you. Fantastic there to hear from your race winner, and of course your new championship leader of season 11. And yes, also thank you for your patience, everybody on stream, for a couple of mishaps this evening. We've had some slight overlay issues, now some slight Discord issues, but one way or another we managed to get through it all, and we ended up seeing some wonderful racing, as we always do here in the Case King Pro Series, and definitely setting us up for what I have no doubt will be a spectacular season ahead of us once more. These McLarens, they are very strong, and they are sure to be at the tippy top of the standings time and time again. But of course, Mercedes, BMWs, they were up there, so don't count out some of those other manufacturers. And we get to some tracks maybe suit them a little bit better. We'll run through our race results in just a moment. So George Boothby wins the season opener with Van Velde and Carreras rounding out the podium, followed by Niox, Del Fanta, Omashima, Bischoff, Karppinen, Whitehead drops to P9 after his penalty, followed by Wenham, Rainier, Barrier, Vassner, Honzig and Manson rounding out your top 15. All managing to gain positions in that race relatively well. They started. Walsingham gets to P16 in the end with Tringali, Castorino, difficult race for him, Berzakovsky, De Campo, Drexler, Lotmeyer, Lang, Pennon, Hutchison, Tajdain, Duakop, Ida, a tricky race as well, Neuwirth and Gross taking away down to the end of the top 30. And your final 10, Steyer, Trafka, Bergold, Solstov, Nalazinski, Hoffman, Clifford, Tanvinza, Hacker, Kingsley, Manisha, your 3 DNS from this race, unfortunately for them. So that is everything that Imola has had to offer, and what a fantastic offer of action it has been. If you have enjoyed watching that tonight, then do look to subscribe to the channel. I'm not sure quite how much longer in the future these Pro Series streams will be coming to you live on this channel. The VODs in one form or another will make their way over to here, so if you want to catch up on the action, then certainly this is the place to be. Like I say, do go and support the twitch.tv/Low Fuel Motorsport channel. Give it a follow over there for our German friends, and also for where these streams will be looking to take place in the future. It'd be great to have as many of you joining us for all the wonderful adventures that Season 11 continues to promise us for the future. Like I say, Brands Hatch next week is a fantastic track. I'm very happy to see it on this season's calendar, and I've no doubt that the fast-flowing nature of that circuit and also the undercut style capabilities that you can have there are really going to give us some brilliant racing. So do not miss that. It'll be same time, same place next week for all of that action. And if you have seen the racing tonight and you think that you fancy getting involved in some of that yourself, then do head over to the lowfuelmotorsport.com website, get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, and you can start making your way through the ranks. Enter some of these championships like the Pro Series, where there's these fantastic prizes up for grabs brought to you by Case King, and then also some amazing other prizes up for grabs in our other series and championships, where we have the likes of endurance racing on Sunday. We've also got the daily racing, of course, for all of your GT3 goodness during the week. And then if ACC maybe isn't quite your thing, then there is also R Factor 2, of course, hosted on LFM now, where that has been wonderfully successful and giving drivers plenty of opportunities to explore other avenues like the Nordschleife, open wheelers, touring cars, you name it, prototypes, it's got it all. So also something definitely to check out. I would recommend that. So, with all of that said and done, thank you everybody so much for joining once again. Season 11 promises to be a great championship once more, and I can't wait to see what we have in store in the coming races. Again, thank you for your patience tonight. Hopefully things will be in a little bit of a better state by the time we get to Brands Hatch next week. We look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible for what promises to be an amazing, amazing season. So thank you everybody so much for watching, but until next time then, it's goodbye.